The UK's King Charles and Queen Camilla pay a historic visit to Pope Leo at the Vatican this week for a moment of ecumenical prayer at the Sistine Chapel, and the beleaguered traditional Latin Mass returns to St. Peter's Basilica on October 25th as part of a TLM pilgrimage. For more on all of this, we're joined by senior Vatican correspondent for the National Catholic Register, Edward Pentin. Ed, thanks for being here. Tell me about this historic joint prayer between King Charles and Pope Leo at the Sistine Chapel. It's the first time a Roman pontiff and an English monarch have prayed together since the Reformation. How significant is this moment for the Church in Rome and whatever's left of the Church in England?
Yes, it is very significant, Raymond. I mean, it comes at a time when the Anglican communion is going through some very difficult times. We heard this week that a big part of the Anglican communion split from Canterbury because of the choice of the new Archbishop of Canterbury, who's a woman bishop. So there's that, but it's also, as you say, very historic. It's the first time that the Prince Charles, the King of England, has prayed with the Pope. The first time that a monarch has prayed with the Pope since the Reformation. The King, of course, is the supreme governor of the Church of England, so it's very much seen as a very ecumenical gesture. And there's other aspects to the visit too, which are very significant. Him going to pray and become a confrater of the Benedictine Abbey of St. Paul's outside the walls in Rome, which is also seen as a great gesture and a gift to the Anglican communion in that sense.
I know that title was extended by the Pope to King Charles at the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls. And but the real question here, Ed, is what does this mean? I know Charles is the head of the Church of England, but how much of a reality is that, given that we're dealing with largely a vastly diminished faith when we're talking about the Church of England? In fact, more Catholics are attending Mass there than people are attending the Anglican services.
Indeed. I mean, I think it's seen possibly as a bit of a help to the Anglican communion to keep them together. But it's come in for some criticism, of course, as well. Some people see it very much as a sort of superficial unity which covers up serious theological differences. And it's a sort of undermines, they say, both Anglicanism and Catholicism, these kind of gestures. But I was talking earlier with Oratorian Father and liturgical expert Monsignor Andrew Wadsworth, who's in Washington, D.C. And he was saying that, he reminded, of course, the roots of the monarchy are Catholic in England. In fact, Westminster Abbey is called St. Peter the Apostle, and it goes back a long way. And Vatican II teaches that the Anglican communion has a Catholic hierarchical structure which impels it towards Catholic unity. And so these gestures, he said, give substance to the hope that the British monarch and the Church of England may one day be restored to unity in the Catholic Church. So in that sense, you could read it very much as a sign of hope, perhaps that unity will come some way down the line, but at the moment it's looking very, very distant, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I mean, that title, Royal Confrater of St. Paul, which is that special chair that the Pope is extending to Charles. I guess the underlying reality here is, what does that really mean when you have the Church of England still occupying Catholic properties, Catholic cathedrals, Westminster Abbey itself? This was a Catholic entity that Henry basically took possession of, and it's been in the hands of the Church of England ever since. And I know the Catholic cathedral is called a pro-cathedral because it still considers the original across town. But give us a sense of what this really means, Edward. What are people in England, how are they reading this, or are they considering it at all?
Well, that's a good question. I think most people have kind of checked out of religion a long time ago in England. Christianity, as we said earlier, there's very few go to church here. So it's seen as really probably quite a sort of irrelevant sort of gesture. And another thing to consider, of course, is that the Catholic Church has given many of these very benevolent gestures to the Anglican communion, but they seem to get further and further away from Catholic teaching. And so you have to ask yourself, what's the meaning of this? Is there really any purpose to this? And is it really of any use? And I think history shows that these don't really have much effect. But maybe, as Monsignor Wadsworth said, it does offer hope that perhaps there will be communion in the future. And, God
Yeah.
works in mysterious ways, and that may happen.
Well, and with this new Archbishopric of Canterbury, it does kind of throw a monkey wrench into things, from the Catholic side of the aisle. But while we're seeing bans on the traditional Latin Mass, Ed, here in the United States, you report in the National Catholic Register this week that on October 25th, Cardinal Raymond Burke will celebrate the first Tridentine Mass at St. Peter's Basilica since Francis suppressed the ancient rite back in 2022. This liturgy is part of a pilgrimage that really sprang from Summorum Pontificum, which was Pope Benedict's motu proprio that allowed free practice and celebration of the ancient rite. What should people take from this celebration? How significant is it? Is it significant at all?
Yes, well, it is significant for the reasons you mentioned, Raymond. I think the fact that it was suppressed since 2022 and now it's come back does give a sign of hope that maybe, that there will be a relaxation of the restrictions from Traditionis Custodes. And the Washington Post reported this week that Monsignor Marco Agostini, who's a leading advocate for the traditional Mass and a member of the Papal Master of Ceremonies, he said that this obviously came from the top. It came from the Pope himself. So that is a sign of hope, I think, for many who go to the traditional Mass, that this could be a sign that times are changing. And then, of course, you've also got Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna, who's no traditionalist, but he's celebrating Vespers in Rome as well as part of this pilgrimage. He's done it before, but the fact that he's come back to do it again, when he hadn't done it since 2022 either, does show a sign of movement, we think, and that it could be possible that yes, we may see some change in the relaxation of Traditionis Custodes.
Well, when we interviewed Cardinal Raymond Burke several weeks ago, he suggested, I think we did it for the podcast, and he suggested that there could be an opening here while saying the Mass there, that the Pope might have a conversation with some of the people who turned up for this Jubilee, for this pilgrimage, and that might present an opportunity to at least awaken the Pope to the desires of this group of faithful and why they feel so drawn to the old rite. And so hopefully that will transpire in the way that he foresees it or foresaw it.
Indeed, yes. And as I say in the article, there are other pontifical liturgies going on in the United States as well over the next month, which is also a signal, I think, that that things will be allowed. Some did say that possibly the liturgy, the Mass in St. Peter's Basilica could be just because of the Jubilee year, and that things may go back to how they were next year. But we'll have to see. But I think certainly there are these signs of hope. And in fact, there are actually 6 liturgies. There's Cardinal Muller's actually celebrating a traditional Mass in Detroit this coming Sunday on the Feast of Christ the King in the Old Rite at the Shrine of St. Joseph. So there are more than I put in the article.
Yeah, and you mentioned in your article San Francisco Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone celebrating on All Saints' Day the Old Rite, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller in Philadelphia on November 2nd, then Cardinal Robert Serra also celebrating the Tridentine Rite in Philly on November 21st. So Ed, are these just one-offs, or is this a determined trend? I mean, some of the places we're talking about, like Detroit, the Tridentine Rite has been banned. So having somebody come in, it's really little more than a showcase, isn't it?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, it is interesting that they're being allowed. And of course, when you've got cardinals wanting to celebrate the traditional Mass, perhaps it's very difficult for the bishop to say no. And they're very keen to do it. And of course, we know that how keen someone like Cardinal Robert Serra is to keep the traditional Mass going. So it's all part of that. But as I say, these are all positive signs. And in many ways, it's also come since, of course, our colleague Diane Montagnier revealed that the raison d'etre behind Traditionis Custodes, if you like, and its credibility was severely undermined because of the misrepresentation of the survey, which was given as the justification for it. So there are serious cracks in the whole the restrictions behind Traditionis Custodes, and perhaps this is part of that we're starting to see things sort of weaken, and that the relaxation will come in time.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting point you raise, and it's an important one for the audience, those who might not have been following this as closely as we have. Diane Montagna several months ago revealed documents that we had never seen of that survey. Pope Francis allegedly sent out a survey to all the bishops of the world asking, hey, how is this relaxation of the Tridentine rite that Benedict instituted, how's it playing out in your dioceses? And the word that we were told he got back was it was divisive, it was causing disunity, it was kind of these radicals, upset about the new Mass. Well, it turns out that depiction was wrong. When you read the actual return, the data that came back to the Vatican, where did that misrepresentation come from, Edward? Who's driving this is the question.
Well, yes. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, Pope Francis, of course, took responsibility for it, but the people around him, I think, were very much pushing this. And there was, of course, this theologian in Rome, Andrea Grillo, who was thought to be behind writing the document, and he's very, very much anti-tradition. And so I think there's been a lot of that, and I think many of them saw it as a chance with Pope Francis to push this, and of course they did. And did it seems very clearly that it was done in an underhand way. And so so very much the argument, it runs against Traditionis Custodes and its validity, it seems, or at least its credibility.
Yeah, and Traditionis Custodes, just for those keeping score, that was Pope Francis's legislation that essentially outlawed or vastly restricted the Tridentine rite, considering it a source of division, which, if you go to any of these local parishes, as I have, it's packed out with young people who are thirsting for the faith, thirsting for tradition, and wanting something eternal to hold on to. And why that is such a danger or a threat in this church today, in these times, in this society and culture, I don't understand. But then again, I'm not a hierarch, and I have no position in the Vatican. Thank you, Lord. Edward, we will leave it there, and keep us updated on what happens as a result of this pilgrimage. Will do. Thank you very much. You can always find Edward Pentin's excellent reporting at Edward Pentin on X, also at ncregister.com. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Raymond.